My name is Jay Vaishnav, and I'm a regulatory affairs professional. I've been a director at large companies and small ones of regulatory affairs, and I'm a trained as a physicist, so I come at it with the scientific point of view. I'm a fellow of the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, and I'm a co-editor of their book, The Fundamentals of Medical Device Regulations. And I've worked in both industry and the FDA, as well as academia.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. Do I call you Jay or Dr. Yeah, Jay is
Jay,
good?
please, yeah.
Awesome. Right on, Jay. So if we can go back a little bit and someone with a PhD in physics and deeply embedded into the scientific side of the whole thing, what is the trajectory or how do you end up working in regulatory affairs in influencing that part of the equation itself?
Oh, I think a lot of people fall into the regulatory affairs just by accident, and that's what happened to me. Yeah, 15 or 20 years ago, it really wasn't as developed a field. There weren't degree programs or anything, and a lot of people just sort of we found our way to it. In my case, I was a professor of physics in the middle of rural Pennsylvania, and my family was all in the Washington D.C. area, and the person I would go on to marry, he was also in the Washington D.C. area, and so I had a strong incentive to return there. And someone told me Jay, they're hiring physicists at the FDA. And first I was confused. I said, but it's food and drugs. What would a physicist do there? I don't know about eating and I don't know about medicines. And they said, no. It's just the name FDA. They do medical devices. And, that's how I got into it. I went there and I said, what can I do for you? And they said, we have these algorithms that really need regulating and we need someone who understands math and can understand the algorithms in depth. And I said, oh, I can do that. And, that's how it started. Yeah.
Nice. Appreciate that. And one of the things, and I think that the last time we met, I was asking you questions as we're getting educated around the space. We ourselves are not regulatory compliance experts. We are AI and IT professionals ourselves. And somewhere along the way, we stumble upon a nuance that I would love to hear your opinion.
Mhm.
Regulatory compliance, regulatory affairs, are those the same things? How are they different? What's your take on that definition, if at all, is different?
Oh, that's an interesting question. They're not exactly the same thing, but they're very related. What do I do as a regulatory affairs professional? I mean, my job is really to make sure that my company is in compliance with all the regulations, and that's a piece of it. But also within that compliance, how to kind of get the most value possible. You always have to comply with the regulations, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. And what's the way to kind of optimize our compliance? Like, let's say I want to bring a medical product to market. There are rules I have to follow. I have to show my device is safe and effective. But there are so many different ways of doing that. And as a regulatory affairs professional, my role is partly to pick out what's the most efficient way to do that. What's the best way to do that? What's the way to comply with the regulations, but still in the way that helps me market my device to the broadest possible population. Yeah.
Hmm. And one could argue that there is a perception that regulatory compliance is seen as rigid. Is there a role for creativity here? How do you balance efficiencies in operation with ensuring, to your point, right, like the product is indeed safe and up to code, if you will?
Right. So regulatory compliance is all about following rules, but if you think about it, so is writing a sonnet, or so is doing theoretical physics, or any number of things, or any writing a fugue or something. Any number of creative pursuits have to follow rules. There are certain laws of physics, but look, Einstein had to obey them, and he was still able to come up with the theory of relativity. So, it's kind of deceptive. You think that following rules is boring, but the creativity is in how you follow them, and there's still a lot of latitude in how you do that. There are laws and regulations that you have to follow, but there's so many ways of interpreting a law or interpreting a regulation and following them. They're interpreted by human beings, and so the basis of it is science, but the science has to be blended with strategy and problem solving skills, and there's the creativity. And like I said, there are many other pursuits where you have to follow rules. That doesn't mean there's no room for creativity.
Hmm. And can you tell me about an example where in your own career you had to be creative, like where any influences, any perspective, any other genres, to your point, right? Like writing a sonnet might be within the construct of a format, but do you have any particular examples of where this took place within the context of regulatory compliance in your case?
Sure. So first of all, I guess what inspired me, or who was one of my inspirations. So I studied theoretical physics, so that is all within a very rigid set of physical frameworks, because you are constrained by what can the world actually do. What can the universe do? You can't make that up. So my PhD advisor was a physicist, and he was also an artist. He created digital art based on this physics, and that really showed me that you can follow the rules, you can follow these very strict rules, but you can still create these beautiful things, and that these two things are not at odds. In fact, they're required. Creativity is required to be able to follow those rules. So that was really the inspiration. And the way I apply creativity in regulatory compliance and in my work is really how to bring different medical devices to market. Now, to bring them to the market, you have to show that they're safe and effective, that they comply with all those, FDA and global, laws and regulations that say my device has to be safe and effective. So how do you follow those regulations? And the creativity comes in how to do it in a way that is least burdensome on your company, and again, gives you the maximum marketing value. So if I want to bring my device to market, how can I, instead of going out and doing a really huge and expensive clinical study, how can I use data that already exists? How can I use science that people have already done? How can I use computational simulation? uh, how can I take data that I might already have lying around from some other country, and how can I bridge that in a way so that it's useful and applies to the US population? How can I, let's say I want to market my device with 10 different indications, or things that it does. And one of them is a sticking point for FDA, but is not so important for marketing my device. So how can I find a solution that, gets rid of, how can I identify that one and get rid of it? So really, that's where the creativity comes in, how to show that products comply with the regulations, how to show they're safe and effective, and thread them through that labyrinth of getting them to market. Yeah.
Is this that's fascinating, and I'm wondering, is there tension in the interpretation from the FDA perspective versus from the device maker, where maybe you have all of the evidence and even the traceability that you are indeed in compliance, but when it comes to putting the story out there, market your product, you might go in a different direction. Is the FDA usually reactive to those changes in the way that the product is described once in market? Is there anything to that particular potential friction between interpretation and perspective from the maker and the regulator?
Oh yes, there's always tension. That's the heart of regulatory, is that tension. Actually, that's what makes it interesting. So, FDA's mission is to, both of them. So FDA and industry, they have some things in common, right? They all want to get good products in the market, but industry wants to get the good products in the market so that they can sell the good products. And FDA really is a public agency mandated to protect public health. And there's some overlap, and there's some tension. And the tension is that, the industry wants to market their device in the most appealing way possible, and FDA wants to make sure that everything is kind of lettered to following, the regulations, and nothing no, that the way that you market it is not outside the way that you actually got FDA authorization for it. So yeah, there's continuous tension. FDA does go back and do post-market surveillance as well as pre-market surveillance at all stages of the product life cycle. They're always looking to make sure that you are within those lines, and it's the job of marketing to kind of go as far as you can within those lines, and not go over. So yeah, the heart of regulatory is that tension and navigating it.
I hear you. And in terms of thinking about and the tension in this case, again, it's a neutral type of observation. It's not saying it's negative tension or positive. I will
Right.
argue that it is because of the tension in the connective tissue of the process that we end up with the best and safest products out in the market, or at least with a mechanism to filter out the ones that don't fit that
Yes.
category. But even looking at organizations internally, and you will have your regulatory, your QA teams, you have your marketing teams,
Right.
but also you have the corporate layer. In
Mhm.
your experience working with global companies and even startups,
Yep.
how is regulatory compliance and regulatory affairs perceived by the business layer of these organizations? What are the expectations and the friction points, again, that might exist inside the building?
Sure. Oh, that's a very interesting question. Yeah. So regulatory, often the negative perception of it is it's a cost center. It's a sink. It's not something that is complying with the regulations is a cost of business, but it's not something that is helping you gain competitive advantage. Right. Everybody has to comply with the regulations, and so that can be the negative side of the perception. And the point of friction also, marketing, of course, wants to market their devices expensively and in as appealing a way as possible. Regulatory says but you have to, but you have to do it in a way that complies. And so there is always that tension. The same tension that exists between FDA and industry exists within industry itself. That was really fascinating for me when I moved from FDA into industry, to understand that. The thing that has to be understood also is that regulatory is not just kind of a policeman. they can a good regulatory strategy can give you a competitive advantage actually. If
Mm,
you can show not just show you comply, but you comply you not just comply but comply in an efficient way, that gives you an
mm,
edge. Every dollar saved is kind of a dollar earned.
mm-hmm.
um, yeah, so you can leverage regulatory such that it is actually not a cost center so much as it is a competitive strategy. And
Mm.
yeah,
And speaking of those efficiencies, and again, being looking at this from the perspective that we walk into the industry as outsiders to a degree and looking for efficiencies in information systems and information flow.
mhm.
Um, in your experience and in speaking with your peers, what is the appetite across the discipline to perform it in an efficient way? Like, are we open as an industry for adopting AI solutions, looking for enterprise software, or is this still rooted at a maturity level in information systems that it might take a wave or two in the evolution of the technology for these efficiencies to be actual pragmatic gains that we see in the operation, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I think it depends on the particular company and the culture and what their processes are. But the people who are willing to embrace new technology are definitely open to solutions to use AI to make things more efficient. I'm just thinking if I want to bring a device to market and I'm starting from scratch, gosh, I need to find out first of all what are the other devices like it. What's that whole history? If I could use AI in some way to identify, okay, this is sort of all the devices like your device, and this is the data that was used to bring all of them to market. That's really helpful, and it saves so much time. Yeah, so I think there's certainly an appetite for it. Anything that helps you to do your job more efficiently is going to help you.
Is there any in your experience any apathy might be too strong of a word, but any resistance in the integration of the current workflows and AI that the industry is trying to overcome? Is that something you have any exposure around?
I've certainly, it's interesting because I work mainly in medical imaging, and the same apathy, or not apathy, resistance you see there
Hmm.
is everywhere. Kind of, oh gosh, what if the AI replaces us? Will we be
Hmm.
without jobs? And I think there's some of that in the regulatory and medical communications uh, community. Also, I've heard that what I don't want to use AI. I don't want to use this because what if it comes and it replaces all of us? I don't want to cross that line. So I've heard that. I think in the end, the answer in radiology is that AI will not replace you. There's still that human judgment factor, and AI. However, people who use AI will probably replace people who don't use AI. That's the thing. And AI certainly it's a tool to make you more efficient. I don't see it replacing the regulatory professional anytime soon.
Yeah, we have a very similar perspective, and again, we have to be very cautious in how we bring that perspective forward as
Right.
AI practitioners ourselves. But I think the replacement argument or storytelling is a little bit exaggerated to get some
Right.
clicks by some providers, and it is what it is. At the end of the day, the way that we look at our own social responsibility is
Mhm.
if we're able to build a capability that can help you, Jay, in bringing the safest product to market,
Right.
the most efficient way, I would love to be a part of that
Right.
conversation. If we are unable to add that value, what are we really building, right? But I think there is a reality in change management. There is an educational journey that we all have to go together, not only as RAQA practitioners, but also on our side on the tech to better understand how are we fitting into the workflows
Mhm.
and how are these claim efficiencies truly perceived? Like,
Right.
are the efficiencies being delivered? And that's a conversation for a different day.
Mhm.
Um, going back to that blend we were talking about of creativity within these highly structured processes and arenas, if you will,
Mhm.
do you consider compliance to be more of a science or an art? Like, how do
Oh,
we balance those two?
right. Well, gosh, interesting. So I would say if compliance or regulatory compliance is an apple, then science is the core, and the art is everything else around it. You can't have regulatory compliance without a device, a medical product, but a device. I focus on
Mm-hmm.
devices, medical device that's solidly built with solid science and engineering. But once you have that solid science and engineering, everything else, how do you show that you comply? How do you bring it to market? How do you keep it on market and keep it compliant? That's all the art. Yeah, like I said, there are 2,000 ways to get from point A to point B, and which one of those ways you pick, that's the art.
I hear you. And in terms of take it. So I'm guessing, and you're completely guessing
Mm,
and indulging the riff on science versus
mm,
art. What is the role of the culture of the organization in influencing their approach? Or I think you alluded to this earlier as well, where it is the tone of the organization that in a way gives you a leaning towards being creative versus not.
right,
What are you seeing in these organizations that might be considered attributes or properties of the behavior of the organization in itself that leans towards being more creative versus being more rigid, and even giving regulatory compliance the perception of these are the naysayers? So basically what I'm trying to get at is, what are we looking, what do we see within an organization that tell us not only are they compliant or they care about quality, they care about the safety of their products, but they also lean towards a creative way of finding the best way of doing the work, if that makes
right.
sense. Am I making any sense? You know
Yeah,
what,
yeah, well,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing you can go into an organization and look at, are the regulatory sort of, are they behaving and are they treated like police? Or are they treated more like partners? Like, are they, is it their job to kind of shoot things down, say, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do this? Or are they more working with the different parts of the organization, with marketing or with R&D, and saying, well, look, this might not be a productive route, but we found this other device that did this, and this is much cheaper and more effective. So how about this? Does this meet your needs? And I think that's kind of just a cultural practice or vibe within an organization. And like I said, are the regulatory more police or are they more partners? And
Right.
and yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and again, this is a selfish question to get educated
Mm,
on the nuance of finding that alternative or existing medical device, that predicate. But what happens, and if you can contextualize it again within the notion of creativity,
right,
when you have an innovation, when it is a net new contribution to how a particular disease or condition is treated, we
right.
might not be able to find that other existing product because it's literally an innovation. How do we navigate that new added layer of complexity from there?
Oh, that's interesting. So you try as hard as you can to find something that is a smooth pathway that has it's always easier to be the second down the road, but maybe sometimes you can't. Maybe you're working with a really innovative device for which there is no predicate. And in that case, unfortunately your regulatory burden has just increased a lot, but your market share has probably also increased because you're doing something genuinely new. So it's a bit of a trade-off, and you have to so you can't find a predicate. That's important information, and that determines your whole regulatory pathway. You'll have to go now to a regulatory pathway. In the device space, it would be a de novo or a PMA instead of a 510K. So yeah, your regulatory burden is higher, but the reward is also probably higher.
I see.
Yeah.
And going back to your experience, because you bring a unique blend where you've seen the regulator side of the house as well as industry. What are the difference? How is your role fundamentally different when you are on one side or the other, and which one require more creativity, if you will?
Oh, they both have some things in common, and they both have some differences. And I think the thing they have in common is whether you're a regulator or whether you're working in industry, your goal is to bring a good product to market that will help people. That's really the common thing, and to do that quickly. Also, the more better products you can bring to market, it just helps the public health, and so everybody is on the same page there and on the same side. Now, the difference is that. If you're a regulator, you really only care about the public health. It's not up to you to say, okay, this is the cheapest, most fastest way to bring this product to market. Now on the
Hmm.
industry side, those are priorities. Industry is governed typically by profit. And not only how can I bring a safe device to market, but how can I do it inexpensively and quickly? So it's kind of there's a big common area, and then there are other parts of it that are different perspective between a federal agency and between industry, which requires more creativity. I think both. I mean, you might
Hmm.
think the simple answer would be industry because you're building things from scratch, whereas at the FDA you're looking at things that other people built. But actually, at the FDA, you're building the regulatory framework that goes around those devices and
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
governs them, and so you have to build that. And so I was surprised when I got there. I thought, oh, where's the role for creativity in this? And then I found at the FDA that I was also building things, and yeah, so
I see. And one thought that came to mind as I'm hearing how you explain both sides of the equation of sorts, in related to ethics and social responsibility in a way. I think to the uninformed or a outsider perspective, when we think about getting creative, when we think about being efficient, one could argue that there might be an invitation towards cutting corner
Mhm.
or sacrificing quality and the integrity of the product in itself. How evident is the line that we are not allowed to cross, getting quote unquote too creative, if you will? And how do we protect the foundational principle, which is this is the best quality and the safest version of the product that we can take to market? How do we balance that need for efficiency and creativity with the scientific realities of the consequences of a product that is not safe?
I think in the end, nobody wants to sell a bad product, right? That's the end of your company, and so that's really the driving force. Everything is driven by something, and in this case, it's really you're driven by wanting the device to be successful out on the public market, and that force really controls a lot of things. You want a successful device, and if you cut corners and you get, you have some, your device starts having accidents and adverse events, and you start building up bad publicity. That's the end of a lot of things, and everyone is motivated to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's just what's fascinating as I continue to learn about the industry, where I understand from an organizational structure perspective how regulatory compliance might have ended up in the quote unquote cost center,
Mm,
but it is such an important function of the success of the business.
right.
Is that changing? Are companies truly now leveraging, might be the wrong terminology, but understanding the strategic value and the fact that I think at the beginning of today's conversation,
Mm,
it can be a competitive
yes.
advantage. Like,
Very much.
why did we end up in the cost center? And are you seeing any evolution outside of that bucket?
Yes, I've seen a lot of evolution in the years I've been in the field. I mean, it started off with regulatory, like I said, being more of a cost center and being viewed that way, and then I saw an evolution. I saw more and more people with really technical backgrounds coming into the field, and I think that changed things a little. People understood that you can kind of, regulatory can be a market advantage, and I see more and more kind of scientists and engineers sort of in the field and kind of working very closely with R&D to make regulatory kind of, okay, we combine it with innovation, and we start. I think this is another paradigm shift I've seen. We start regulatory very early in the process, so
Hmm.
they actually have influence into the device design and development instead of coming in at the end and saying, oh, this is you need to fix this and you need to fix this. So yeah, I have seen an evolution where it comes closer maybe to R&D.
Speaking about the new entrants, the new professionals, those who are looking at the industry, be that early career or midway through their journey,
Mhm.
what advice would you offer to those in looking into getting into medtech regulatory? How do you help them find the tools and the knowledge and skills, if you will, to be successful in this career path?
I think the best, and I've gone out and interestingly I've gotten feedback from people. What do you like in a regulatory professional from outside of regulatory? Because I always want to know. And many people have told me, they said the best are not the police, as I've said before. There are a lot of people who think, oh, regulatory, I like to say no, so this is a good job for me. And in fact, no, you really want to be the person who says, yes, 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 but yes, let me help you get to that yes. And so the best ones aren't police. They're really problem solvers, and they're partners with other parts of a company, and really they're partners with the regulatory agencies too. They don't view the regulatory agency as this sort of innovation squasher, but as really partners in wanting to bring safe and effective technologies to market and help patients. So I think those are the qualities. I think if I had to give advice, I would say that, as in science and in regulatory, whatever, it's good to understand a problem from all sides. And I know for me, my time at FDA, my time working in business and marketing, my time working in science, all really helped me kind of become, the sort of regulatory person who I try to, help other parts of the company, because I've been in those parts. I understand the pain points. So I think circulate. That's part of my advice. Try a few different things.
Appreciate that. I do like to see, and this is a little bit self-serving being an engineer myself, but I love to hear where in any process that governs the doing, that at the core is a scientific product, be
Mm,
that a medical device, in my industry software, having someone with a scientific foundation tends to be extremely valuable. You
right.
need to understand the problem that we're solving. You might not be the highest hierarchy expert in the solution,
Right.
but you understand the nuance and the components,
Hmm.
and why they are presented in the fashion that they are. So I love to see that progression where, yes, you are on the workflow management to take the product to market
Hmm.
from the context of regulatory compliance, but you're bringing in a baseline understanding of the science of that product.
Right. No,
Yeah,
it's like speaking. It's almost like, the more you speak someone else's language, the better you can communicate. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
indeed.
So
And is there anything else that you would like to share? Any events, any promotions, anything top of mind that you want to share with the audience? The time is yours.
Oh, sure. I just want to maybe a little plug for the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, which is a nonprofit organization of all regulatory affairs professionals, and a great way to, get into the field, learn about the field, and connect with other people in the field.
Awesome. Fantastic. Jay, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation. I'll be on the lookout for all of the content that you continue to publish. And I'm really, really happy that we had an opportunity to talk today.
Thank you, Martin. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.